we are all hitched up. As you can see in the background, it's been a long, arduous, wet morning, as you can probably see. I'm both wet with rain and sweating like a stuck pig, but we got it all done. We are out of our normal routine, so hopefully everything goes well. But again, we're headed out to our first Campoholics, and that ought to be really interesting. We're super excited to go out. We've been here for a couple of months, so we are ready to get on the road and see what happens. All right, don't worry, I didn't run over the camera. So it's been a miserable, long day. It's raining, it's dumping. Orange sheets, right? Cats and dogs. Whatever your favorite comparison is, it's raining that. I think we probably got, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes before we're gonna be able to unload here.
As my mother-in-law would say, it's a gully washer or a toad strangler.
Yeah, something like that. So anyway, it's been like this off and on all day.
So this is pretty much what we've been dealing with all day long. This is the worst of it, which we are like 6 miles away from the campground. So we're gonna have to wait it out before getting all set up. But it's been pretty much nothing but rain all day long.
I think we got I don't think we went 5 minutes today, any stretch, where it wasn't raining. But we're here. Nothing fell apart yet. Although I did get an alert from one of my leakage detectors, so I got to get some new seals around my pass-through doors. Somebody has to order me the stuff here. My parts manager has to order my parts for me. So anyway, we're here, and it could be a while before we get set up. But at least we're here. All right, guys. So huge spoiler alert. We actually did get all set up. It was fine, but we did have to sit there for a few minutes to wait for the rain to stop.
Yeah.
It was a massive torrential downpour, but we got it all set up. And I guess we just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what the Campoholics was all about, what that meetup was all about. I don't know, you want to take that?
Sure. So this was the Campoholics' first meetup, and really it was just a social gathering. During the day, you were pretty much on your own. We were in the middle of Amish country, so there was plenty to do there. A couple of wineries, lots of Amish bakeries.
So it was really, like she said, just a social meetup. It's really just a time for people to get together and get to know each other. And I think the Campoholics provided a pretty good forum, if you will, for doing that with the activities that they had planned. I don't know, it was a really good time to just meet people. So we don't want to spend a whole lot of time here on the Campoholics because we got a little bit of a different topic to get into. But a couple of the activities we really enjoyed were, one, the door prizes, because we won a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the camper crawl.
Yes. The camper crawl was really fun. They had 6 different stations. So 6 different campers signed up, and they provided a drink and a snack, and we just went camper to camper, and it was a lot of fun.
We like drinks and we like snacks, so it worked out real well for us.
Yes, and the night ended with a ginormous thunderstorm that we had to run through, hoping not to get killed by the lightning and the thunder. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. We really appreciate the Campoholics, and we're actually signed up for next year. We booked before we even left.
So let's talk about some of the stuff we won, because it was some really cool stuff, I thought. So number one, we won 3 times, but we only took 2 prizes because we felt guilty about the third one. So the first one we won was a really cool drink set by Grand Design. So for me, it was a whiskey glass, and for her, it was a stemless wine glass. So that was really neat. And then we won a gift bag from More Ride, which included, 1, a hoodie, and I love hoodies. Number 2, it was what was the wind-up thing?
A cord keeper.
A cord keeper from More Ride, which it's your tether for your tow vehicle. You can wrap it around there, and then for us, it just magnets right onto our kingpin. Keeps all that crap right out of the way for us. Seriously, this thing is so easy to use, and it's so handy that it has quickly become one of my favorite little gadgets. All you do is you just take your cord and stick it through here, and then you just simply wrap the whole thing up. And then once you've got it wrapped up, you just stick it right to the pin box. Wrap up your trailer brake wire, and done. The whole thing's out of your way. And then the third thing was the
motion activated step lights. There were 2 in the package, so we're really excited to get those on because we don't like to leave our outside lights on for the most part, but at the same time we kind of want a little bit of illumination when we come back to the rig, so these are perfect. They'll pick us up when we come in, but they're not going to be on all night.
Do I have a bee on me? I feel like Cody. No? No? Okay.
You had one on your hand.
Did I?
Yeah, but
I
think
just
it's
thought
gone
it was a sweat bee. So okay. So enough about the Campoholics. It was a good time. Mike and Missy were great hosts, and like she said, we're signed up again next year. So again, we had a great time, and we'll see them again next year. But we wanted to get on to a more important topic because this trip and the trip before, 2 trips in a row, we've had tire issues. So 2 trips, 2 tire changes. The first one, actually, I don't think either one of them were really our fault. The first one was a bulge in the tire. The second
probably
one,
due to some really bad roads that we were on, maybe a pothole that we hit, but yeah, there was a bulge.
Yeah, Colorado roads suck.
Yeah.
Like really bad.
A lot.
And then the second one was just a leaky valve stem, which I was able to take it in and get that repaired for free. So, but they both required a tire change. And we wanted to talk a little bit about tire and wheel safety on this video.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to get into starting right this second.
We're losing pressure, as you can see now. Perfect.
All right, so I don't have enough blocks, I don't think, to get the jack up high enough to get on the frame. I don't really want to do it from the axle. So we just use the leveling system to get this side up off the ground. Seemed to work all right. Worst case scenario, something fails and it comes right back down on the other wheel. So we're just going to do it this way. Okay, so we safely got the tire changed out. Hopefully there are no other problems, obviously, because we only have one spare. So I don't know if this is what happened or not, but we have the TPMS system. You know, those go on and off quite a bit. And I think sometimes maybe you got to be careful about putting those things on because you might twist the valve stem a little bit. I don't know if that's what happened with us or not, but I can tell you that in the future, I'm going to be very careful about putting those TPMS things on to make sure that we don't twist the valve stems. Something else to point out here is I know that I think Lippert says you should never raise your rig using the landing gear, but sometimes you just may not have any choice. But you know, I just want to point that out. That's not the way it's supposed to be done, but unfortunately I didn't have enough blocks to get a jack, and my jack stands underneath of there. I didn't bring blocks with me for some reason, not sure why. Anyway, the third thing is that I'm really glad I had my EcoFlow system, the inverter, because I don't have a DC powered air pump or air compressor. So that was really important for me to be able to plug that sucker in on the road. I've had to use it a few times on the road, and every time I'm just really glad that we've got that inverter in there. So obviously a normal solar setup would help you, or would allow you to do that too. But I just wanted to point that out, that it's super important to make sure that you've got some sort of AC source while you're on the road. So anyway, we're gonna get back at it. You can see here, Candace is wrapping up. So for those of you who are still on the road out there, be careful and safe travel. So we're gonna start off by talking about my top 2 wheel and tire safety tips. So number 1 is
TPMS.
Get a TPMS. That is the number 1 tip that I can give you, because it doesn't matter everything else that you do. You can be doing everything right, but if you just have a tire that has some kind of defect in it and your tire starts to overheat or lose pressure, your TPMS is going to tell you. So I don't know how else to put it. Get a TPMS so that you can see what's going on with your tires. That's the number one tip. We use a Timate, something or other. I don't know the model. I'll put a link in the description below, but we use the Timate. It's one of the cheaper ones, but it has really saved us a couple of times, I think. So, including the most recent time where we had, I would say, rapid depressurization of the tire.
Absolutely. Now we're losing pressure. As you can see, that left.
So get a TPMS. Number 2, don't drive like a maniac. I see a lot of people, we drive 65 miles an hour, set it on cruise. There may be some debate on whether you should use cruise while you're towing, but I do. So I set it on cruise, 65 miles an hour, and I see these ginormous fifth wheels, toy haulers, passing us up doing 75, 80 miles an hour. It's just silly. That's hard on your tires. It's hard on the entire rig. So that's my number 2 tip. So number 1 is TPMS. Number 2 is just drive like a sane person.
Remember, you're hauling a lot of weight behind you, and your stopping speed is a lot more than just your truck alone. So,
stopping distance, yes.
Yeah, your stopping distance, yeah. So just
keep that in mind
a little bit.
Yep, tame it down a little bit. Okay, so I'm checking my list here. So number 3 is tire inspections. You got to do tire inspections. That's how I found, not the last one, but the one before, was I was doing an inspection, just doing a walk around the entire rig after we pulled in. And I noticed that we had a bulge in one of our tires. And obviously that, I mean, I don't know what a big bulge versus a bulge you shouldn't worry about. Talking about bulges, that's a little weird. But I had a bulge in the tire and I just didn't want to chance it. So we changed that tire out. We took it in. They said, yep, that's a bad tire. Yep. We probably hit something more than likely, and it caused that bulge in the tire. Again, that was in Colorado. Terrible, terrible roads. Okay. So tire inspections, you're looking for, again, a bulge in the tire. You're looking for any kind of dry rot. Hopefully there's no dry rot because hopefully you're paying more attention to your tires and swapping them out more often than that. Look for nails. Look for just anything that might be stuck in your tire that's causing maybe a slow leak. Tread depth, I'm sure that most of you have heard about the penny test on your tires. It's not any different for your trailer tires. Stick that penny in there upside down, and if it covers up Lincoln's head, you're good to go. If you can see the top of Lincoln's head, you need a new tire. Inflation, that's another one. We're going to talk a little bit more about inflation in just a moment, but I did want to point out inflation is very important. How much pressure is in your tire for the loading that you have. And then I'll let Candace talk about the manufacturing date because you got to pay attention to that.
Yes. So there's a series of 4 numbers, and the first 2 numbers correspond to the week of the year and the last 2 to the year. So say it says 4022. That means that it was manufactured in the 40th week of 2022. So that'll tell you exactly when your tire was manufactured. You want to change out your tires at about the 5-year point, including your spare tire. So check them all.
For those of you, especially that may buy a used rig, pay attention to that because when we bought ours, we have a 2016, we bought it in 2021, and that was the original spare that was up underneath of there, so it was 5 years old, and we had to replace it right away. So pay attention to the manufacturing date because they're only supposedly good for 5 years-ish. Now, I mentioned inflation checks. So every time you get underway, in my opinion, you should check tire inflation. Make sure that you are at the right pressure for the amount of load that you have. So let's dive into that for just a minute because it is entirely possible to either overinflate or underinflate your tires. So let me just show you real quickly where I find the information I need whenever I'm airing up my own tires. The tires we use are the Goodyear Endurance Special Trailer tires, and just doing a quick Google search, I was able to find the tire loading chart for these specific tires. My specific size is the 235/86 teens, and if we just go across the row for that specific size of tire here, we can see all the different pressures at the top that correspond for the expected loading that we have on those tires. So for example, if I'm expecting to basically max out my tires on the loading at the 3420, then I know that my cold inflation pressure needs to be about 80 pounds. If I'm expecting something a little lower than that, let's say maybe around this 3,200 pounds, then we can see I need to be closer to about 75 pounds. And again, you can be overinflated or underinflated for your tire based on the amount of load that you expect them to carry. The second thing that comes along with that is the torque checks. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't do torque checks every single day. If we're on the road, if we're traveling and we're going from spot to spot to spot day after day, I won't check them every single day. But if we've been sitting for a while, I will check those torques, or I will check them if we've done a lot of really tight maneuvers, because you guys know that when you're doing tight maneuvers on those wheels, they flex, right? So those wheels will do kind of this, I don't know if that's going to come through, they'll do like this thing when you have a really tight turn, and that puts stress on those lugs and those lug nuts. So it's important that if you've done a little bit of that tight maneuvering, that you check those lug torques to make sure that your wheel's not going to fall off going down the road, Justin Thomas. So that's probably not his fault, but he did lose a wheel going down the road. Sorry, Justin, love you, guy. But make sure that you're checking those torques at least every couple of days. If you're traveling and if you've been sitting for a while, make sure you're checking those. And another tip on the lug torques is that information should be in your RV owner's manual. So I know in my owner's manual, it gives me specifically what my torque pattern should look like. It tells me exactly how to torque the wheels, meaning if your wheels are supposed to be torqued to 125 pounds, you don't go straight to 125 pounds. There's a process for getting there. So that should be in your manual, as well as exactly what torque you should go to. The next tip is have the right tools. And I'm gonna just read this off on my list here because I don't wanna miss anything. There's a lot of really good stuff on here. So number one, the right tools. So you're gonna need an air compressor. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter whether or not you ever get a flat tire or not, you're gonna need an air compressor, because you should be checking those air pressures before you get underway. And more than likely, at some point you're going to need an air compressor to air up a tire. I have two different types of air compressors. The one that I normally use is just an AC powered air compressor, and I just plug it into a 120 outlet and I air up my tires that way. It's like a 3-gallon, I think it's like a 3-gallon air compressor. Goes up to 125 pounds. It's fairly compact. We bought it at Walmart. It was pretty cheap. Yeah. Because we didn't know that we should carry a compressor at the time. Remember? And we had to stop at Walmart and buy one and air up the tire in the parking lot. Yep. So, air compressor, like I said, I have two of them. My second one is, I just got it recently. My stepdad, they just sold their RV, and he gave me a Viair DC powered compressor. And basically this thing just hooks right up to a battery. It's almost like jumper cables. You just put it right across the battery, and then it's got an on-off switch. You turn it on and it runs. You turn it off and it stops. So it's kind of a continuous duty pump. I haven't actually used it yet, but I'm just trying to figure out where I should keep it, if I should keep it, you know. But anyway, I have two of them. I may just keep both of them because you never know what might happen.
All right, so the other thing you should also always travel with are jack stands and a bottle jack.
Or some type of jack that is capable of lifting your rig up off the ground.
Yes. So we have two 6-ton jack stands and a 20-ton bottle jack. So you want to make sure that your jack stands and bottle jack are big enough to support the weight of your rig. Sometimes those jacks and jack stands are not going to be tall enough to reach your frame. So it's a good idea to carry around a couple of wood blocks that you can put underneath your jacks and jack stands to give them that extra height. Otherwise, you may end up in a situation where you need to use the leveling system to raise one side of your rig off the ground. And some people, I think, some rigs are not even going to have that option. So we have the Lippert electronic leveling system. So I can just like hit a couple of buttons and make one side of my rig go up high enough to lift the tires off the ground. Mm-hmm. Now, full disclosure here, I don't know that is the right way to do that. I'm not sure that Lippert is actually going to endorse that, but it works. Trust me, I've done it twice. And if you find yourself in a situation where you've got to do it, you got to do it. Because the reality is, I would rather use the leveling system to raise one side of my rig if I'm on the side of the road somewhere and I just want to get this done so I can get off the road. Because sometimes you can't choose where you pull over. You got a flat tire, you're rolling down the road. You can either pull over
and change that tire, or you can take a chance, try to make it to the next exit, and then possibly damage your rim in the process. So there's probably going to be a lot of you who are like, oh, I should do it this way, and you should do it that way. But the reality is each situation is different. But if you don't have the jacks and the jack stands that can raise your rig up, and you don't have the blocks, use your leveling system. It's okay. So to go along with the air compressor, you're going to need the right kind of air chucks, right? You're going to need some air chuck to put air in your tires. So I have several that I use. So I have one for the truck because I have the dual wheel tires. I've got the long air chuck that I can get into that inner tire on the dually. But for the rig, I don't have the air chuck as much as I have like an air gun that goes onto my hose off of the compressor. And it has a gauge on it, a digital gauge on it, so that I can see the pressure that I'm getting up to in my tire. And speaking of air gauges, I have several different ones. So I have one that's attached to the air gun that I use. That's what I normally use to air the tires up, when we're getting underway. And then number two, I have this Slime sport gauge that I got. It's just a little handheld deal. It's just really easy to carry. It's also a digital gauge. And then I also have a third one that is kind of been my backup to my backup because it's not super accurate, but I kind of know like how off it is. It's just not my normal one that I use. Like I said, it's my backup to my backup. So I got 3 pressure gauges. I've got all the air chucks that I need. So anywhere I'm at, anything that's happened, I'm pretty much guaranteed I can air up a tire or check its pressure.
All right, so another tool to have is a 4-way lug wrench. So a lot of you probably have a basic lug wrench, which is fine. It'll get you through, but a 4-way is kind of a game changer. For women who don't have a lot of that upper body strength, that 4-way just gives you that extra bit of oomph. Literally, you just pop it on there, and once you get that loosened, you just spin it and it goes. We have mounted it on the wall of our pass-through, so it's nice and handy. But a 4-way lug wrench is definitely worth the money, just for the ease of use.
Yep.
And the extra, like I said, that extra oomph.
Right, and if the 4-way doesn't work, then I actually keep a pneumatic air gun as well. And I'll say that I wouldn't recommend using the pneumatic air gun to put the lug nuts on because you don't know what torque you're going to. You could over torque them, you could under torque them. Like for example, mine goes up to 450 foot-pounds. Well, I don't want 450 foot-pounds on my lug nuts. But if I come across a lug nut or two that I just can't get even with that 4-way wrench, I wouldn't hesitate to break out that pneumatic air gun and use that to get that off. So like I said, when you're in that situation, you're on the side of the road or you got to get underway, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and a pneumatic air gun can help you out with some of those lug nuts that may have been over torqued by a dealer or by the tire shop or whatever the case may be. Now, getting back into the torque checks that I talked about earlier that you should keep your eye on every few days or so, make sure you have a torque wrench, and make sure that you get a torque wrench that is big enough or goes up to a high enough setting for your wheels. So here's the thing. So right now, I have a torque wrench that goes up to 125 pounds. I'm pretty sure that when we get a new rig, spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure that when we do end up upgrading our rig, I'm going to have to get a bigger torque wrench because those wheels are going to have to be torqued to a higher spec. So just pay attention to that. But make sure you have a torque wrench to get those lug nuts torqued to the right specification. Now here's a good one, the spare tire crank. If you don't know where your spare tire crank is, you better find it. If you don't have one, you better get one because you're not going to be able to change your tire without it. Well, actually you probably can, but it's going to be really difficult. And I don't know what it's like on all rigs, but for our rig, the crank actually goes through the bottom trim on the slide, and then it goes kind of into the frame where it connects into the winch that lowers and raises the spare tire. So if you don't have that crank, you're never going to be able to get that spare tire down, and you're never going to be able to change that tire. So if you don't know where your spare tire crank is, make sure you find it. If you don't have one, make sure you get one or you're screwed. Now let's talk about lug nuts. So I'm not a lug nut expert, I'm not a tire expert or a wheel expert, but here's what I know. When we change a tire, when we have to put our spare tire on, our spare tire leaves more of the lug bolt showing than our normal rim. We have capped lug nuts, which means when I put those lug nuts on, they tighten down. But I'm not 100% certain that those lug nuts are tightening down like they should, because I think some of them may be hitting the end of the lug bolt. So in my case, what we're going to do is we are going to buy open-ended lug nuts just for the spare tire. So I'll get a set of 8 of those, so that when I have to change out my tire and that rim is just a little bit different, I can be certain that my lug nuts are going all the way down. I don't know if I would ride with those all the time. I kind of feel like we should stick with what the manufacturer gave us, but I think it's good enough to get us to the next stop where we can get a new tire, get the original rim back on there, and just kind of stay safe. But lug nuts, that was my scenario. I would tell you to make sure that you have the right lug nuts in case you need to swap out a tire on the road. You don't want to find out while you're swapping the tire out that you have the wrong lug nuts and that your wheel's not going to stay on.
That's wobbling.
Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. Make sure you got good lug nuts for even your spare tire. The last thing that I'm going to talk here about as far as gear is safety gear. When you're pulled off to the side of the road, you want to make sure you have the right safety gear. I'll be the first to admit, actually, we don't have everything that we need, but we do have safety vests. Bright colored vests. We have orange and yellow.
Thank you, Grand Design.
That's right. Thank you, Grand. Actually, we got them all from Grand Design,
yes,
didn't we?
Did.
Yeah, we got them all from Grand Design. So, at least while we're out there on the side of the road, there's something bright that says, hey, look at me, dummy, I'm here, don't hit me. But, some other things that you should think about is maybe some cones.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing I was thinking about?
Flashers, maybe.
Flashers? And maybe even some flares? I don't know. Especially at night, I think flares would be a good thing to have if you're out there at night. Flashers and flares for nighttime, stranded on the side of the road kind of stuff. But as far as driving one of these huge SOBs in the dark, let's switch topics a little bit. It's not really about tire safety or anything anymore, but it's about travel days and planning your travel days. And I'm going to let her talk about this one because that's her arena.
Yeah, so when we first hit the road, we were trying to do between 300 and 350 miles a day, and those were just really long days. I mean, you're trying to get out of there in the morning, you got a lot of preps, and then when you get in, you still have a decent amount of preps. Driving is just really hard. We realized once we started doing shorter days that they're actually much better, including our most recent when we had that tire issue. And because it was a shorter day, and when we pulled over, it took us, 45 minutes?
45 minutes or so.
To change out that tire. We weren't rushed.
We were videotaping too, so, I'm like the dude on Christmas Story where I'm like, let's get this done. She's like the little kid who's like,
oh, fudge.
We'll cut that part out.
So because we had already planned a shorter drive day, the fact that we had that unexpected emergency and we had to change out that tire, we weren't feeling rushed when we were changing it out. We were able to take our time, do it right, and we weren't worried that it was taking so long and, oh my gosh, we're going to get back into our site, it's going to be after dark, whatnot. So I really recommend planning those shorter days as much as possible. It's just easier on you. If you're traveling with pets, it's easier on them. And again, nobody ever plans for an emergency.
It doesn't have to be a bad thing either, right? Because you said earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Every now and then, as we're driving along, and it's like, oh my God, there's this really cool thing that we can go see. And, so it gives you a little bit of opportunity to go see the sights on your way that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah, like the world's biggest ball of yarn.
Or that SpaceX thing that we passed by.
Yeah, the SpaceX thing. It was a SpaceX launch pad, I think it was.
Yes.
Is what it was. We passed by that. It was like right off the road. Or at least I didn't realize once we were going to be going through Roswell, New Mexico. Right? So that was kind of a treat.
If you got a little bit of time left in your day because you're not pushing to get in before dark, you can stop and see those things.
Right. Maybe even catch a winery on the way, get a little tossed. No, just kidding. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this video, I think. The Campoholics was a great time. We really appreciated Mike and Missy and everything that they did to bring everybody together. But the real point of this video was the tire and wheel safety. I hope you learned something here, something that maybe you didn't know before. But I think those are really good tips that we've learned along the way. Mostly I think from other people, watching channels like this. Some of it we figured out on our own, kind of the nuances of everything. I think you kind of figure out on your own as you go along, the kind of gear that you like to take with you, that kind of stuff. So what's in our future here the next couple of weeks?
the Grand Design National Rally, their 8th one, and this is going to be our first one, and we are so excited.
Yeah, I don't know really what to expect. Going to some seminars, hopefully meeting some more, some more people, swapping stories, learning a lot, hopefully.
Yes.
And hopefully maybe a little drinking, a little partying.
A little bit. There's supposed to be over 600 rigs there. Rigs, not people. 600 rigs. So we should meet at least one other couple to hang out with.
Yeah, well, hopefully. I don't know. Sometimes she makes it difficult.
Oh, no.
And I'm looking forward to getting some Grand Design swag. Hopefully they got some Grand Design swag for us there. We can't spend too much money there, but I want to get some Grand Design swag. So that's what's coming up for us. As always, happy camping and stay safe out there.
Yep.